Good morning, my name is Jasmine, and today my presentation is going to be on Anne Frank. So my personal experience with this topic is that when I was a sophomore in high school, I took AP European History, and when I was learning about Germany and Adolf Hitler and the Holocaust, it really triggered me to really pick up the Diary of Anne Frank and really learn and really see what it was about. And learning about Anne Frank, it really inspired me to really pay attention to what's out there in the world and other world history, and to see what a strong society and cultural of people could do to others. So to start off, we are going to be learning three main things. So first, we are going to be learning about Anne's life before and during the Holocaust. And then secondly, we are going to be learning about the Holocaust. We're going to be learning the extent of the Holocaust, who came up with it, what happened, what the Jews were put up, what the Jews had to go through at the end of the day. And then lastly, we're going to be learning about Anne's final mark and her basically legacy on her diary and what it left and what it does to people now today. So starting off, this is Anne Frank. She was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1929. She lived with her sister Margot and her two parents, Edith and Otto Frank. She lived a very normal Jewish life up until the age of 10 when Nazis invaded Germany and it became Nazi Germany. So during that time, it was a very changing time for Jews all around. They had to they had laws that they had to follow now. They couldn't go into cinemas, they couldn't operate motor vehicles, they had to wear the Star of David on all of their clothing, they were established a curfew, and these rules just accumulated over time, and Anne didn't really understand. She was only a young girl. She just knew what her parents told her and just followed what her parents told her to do, and things like that. This is another picture of Anne. This is her in school. Anne at first went to a regular Dutch Jewish school. It was fine, there was no problem, but now that the Nazis have invaded Poland, she had to go to an all-Jewish school, which was very odd to her. She didn't understand why. She just knew that these men were telling her they had made laws and that she had to go and do things like that. Also, before Anne and her family went into hiding, her sister Margot got a call report in 1942 to attend a labor camp, and Anne's parents weren't really fond of the labor camp. They were concerned for Margot's safety, so Edith and Otto Frank decided to put their family into hiding. So the Frank family went into hiding in Otto Frank's business annex in 1939. They went into hiding, and basically it was a small annex. They ended up really living there with 8 people, and it was just not very up to their circumstances. So what I'm trying to convey is that living in an annex with not only 4 members of a family, but then you have another family of 3, and then you have a Jewish dentist, that makes a total of 8 people living in one small annex. And it really wasn't the life that Anne Frank had dreamed of. She really wanted to just be a young girl, and really, she always loved to write. She was always very fond and things like that. But now that you learned about Anne Frank, we're now going to move on to the Holocaust and what that entails. So the Holocaust was a mass genocide in Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1945. Adolf Hitler said that he realized that Jews were not as pure, and they did not really make up German purity, that they were aliens and that they were not to be trusted or anything like that. So he really started to hound on Jews. He started to move them into ghettos, and when he moved them into ghettos, he moved thousands and thousands of Jews into ghettos, and it really wasn't a safe and sanitary place. It was a bunch of apartments that were all put together basically, and it wasn't healthy, it wasn't sanitary, there was very little food. So then once the ghettos became overpopulated and overcrowded, he decided to move them to concentration camps. Now, the most famous concentration camps are, of course, Auschwitz and Berlitz and things like that. those concentration camps were really the mass killing sites. Those were, if you were sent to Auschwitz, most Jews knew that something was going to happen to them if they were ended up being sent to Auschwitz. Now, there were other concentration camps that were just labor camps, because they obviously couldn't send all of tens of thousands of Jews to just one camp. They had to have multiple, and multiple camps were used for labor for the German army. They were used to help make their clothes and things like that. So this, however, is once they got to the concentration camp, this is what the barracks looked like. This is where they had lived. This is where they spent the majority of their time. Now you can tell that the barracks, that they're all piled on top of one another. It's not very sanitary. It doesn't look very warm. There's not like very many blankets and pillows and warm company items that you would find in a regular home. No, these are ice cold wood barracks where at the end of a long hallway was a water faucet. That's really about all they had. Food was scarce, and in these barracks, they weren't very sanitary, so they developed a disease called typhus, which is deadly if not treated, and there were no cures. The Jews didn't receive any type of medical attention or medical care, and if they did, it was to the Mendeleev Project, or the Mengele Project, excuse me, I'm sorry, where he wanted to study twins to see how they could try to make the German race even purer if they knew about twins and how to make twins and how to do things like that. So this is also another picture of the effect of the concentration camp. This is due to starvation and not having enough food and not being able to have the shower resources and things like that. These are supposed to be young, healthy, grown men who look very skinny, look very petite. They look like they can barely walk. They can't really move. Now, if you started to show these signs at a concentration camp, you were sent right away to the gas chambers. Now, when they first arrived to the concentration camps, everybody was separated. They separated women and children. They separated young girls. They separated young men, older and elderly people. If you were older and elderly and sickly, they would send you straight to the gas chambers because you were of no use to the Nazis. They couldn't use you for anything. You were already sick. So they just said, we might as well just kill them off anyway, and they were sent into the gas chambers. Now, the gas chambers is a really big, basically, building that housed hundreds of Jews, and a doctor would come and he would pour gas pellets down a gas chamber and then close it. And then they would set off oxygen tanks to let the gas pour out, and once the Jewish people, that was the only air that they could breathe because there's no more oxygen, it's just the gas, they would eventually die, and the doctor would watch through a peephole, and then once everyone was dead, the doctor would sign one birth certificate for however many people. There could have been 700, there could have been 500, there could have been any amount of people, but he only signed one birth certificate for all of those bodies that they had died. And the Holocaust was just a real hard time for Jews, because Jews, they didn't know what to expect. They didn't know if they would ever be liberated. They didn't know if it was ever going to end, if they would make it out of the concentration camps. And majority of the Jews didn't. During the Holocaust, over 6 million Jews were killed, and out of that number, more than 1 million of those deaths were children, or children or babies and things like that. Now, the Holocaust really had an effect because it was a mass genocide of Jewish people, and these are people who were just living their lives based off of a religious belief, and they're getting confined and burned and things and murdered and things like that just for not being pure enough to be German, according to Adolf Hitler. And it was just a very hard time for them. And once they were liberated by the Soviet army, it was very different. Once they were liberated, they went back to their old ways. They were trying to at least piece by piece together what happened. Now, if you were sent to Auschwitz and you were one of the good kind and you were able to do work, they put numbers on you. Now, there are survivors today that still have those they still have those numbers tattooed on them, and that always stays with them, that they were a victim of the Holocaust, and that will never change from them. But now, moving on from the Holocaust, we are going to talk about Anne's diary and her final mark. So Anne's diary, she received on her 13th birthday because she had always wanted to be a writer. She would write at a young age. She would write poems and newscasting and things like that that she would share with her family because she wanted to be a person on the radio who was informative and like a newscaster basically, and wanted to really have her voice be heard. So at 13, she was given this diary, and she would write to. In many of her journal entries, she would write to a fictional character named Kitty. Now, Kitty was a character that she had read in books before, and it was someone that she felt that she could confide into, and that's someone who really understood her, and things like that. So most of her journal entries about her life and about what it was like living in the annex and living with all of these people and dealing with her mother and her sister and going through a boy crush at the time and things like that really were written in Anne's diary because she couldn't express them to anybody because she lived up in an annex with just her family for 3 years until they were found in 1942. And the sad thing is that Anne was a really great writer. She really knew how to make a play on words. She really knew how to convey and get her point across. She really was very hypocritical of herself. There are many papers where she's just rewriting over and over again, especially when she wrote short tales and things like that, which were in separate sheets of paper because Anne wrote so much that once she ran through the diary, she needed another diary and another one, and she just ended up going through notebooks and writing on napkins and writing on things like that because it was so important to her to get her feelings and emotions out because Anne fought with self-identity and couldn't really understand on why she was being treated like this because she considered herself to be a Dutch Jew, but she can no longer consider to be Dutch because the Nazis took her citizenship, her Dutch citizenship away, and then she can't be Jewish because she's being punished for being Jewish. So she's very lost within herself, and her diary really provides comfort for her to just release all these feelings that she has into her fictional character Kitty. Also, her diary also plays a part in letting me and other young scholars around the world know that this is what someone went through. This is the actual day-by-day life of someone who was in hiding during Nazi Germany. It really goes to show what the extent of what the Nazis did and how the Holocaust and things like that really affected lives of these Jews. And then in this photo that I have here, this is actually a picture of the annex. This is where Anne lived. This is what it looked like. This is her stove and things like that. It was really small. It was really hard for them. They couldn't walk around or eat or use the bathroom at certain times because they lived in the annex of her father's business, which her father could no longer own because Jews were not allowed to own a business according to German law now. So her father had to pass on the business and decided to hide in the annex along with the Van Pels and a Jewish dentist that they housed. It was very small, it was very cramped, it was not the ideal part for a typical young girl to try to grow up and try to find herself and be herself. It was very hard for Anne to do these things, but she prevailed and she wrote in her diary, but unfortunately in 1942, the Frank family, along with the Van Pels and the Jewish dentist, were found hiding in the annex by Nazis, and they were taken to concentration camps. And unfortunately, the only survivor of this was Otto Frank, which was her father. And Frank died in the concentration camp after catching the disease typhus. When Otto Frank returned back to the annex, Miep, who was the person who had helped them in the beginning, she went back and she found Anne's diary and all of her tales, and she saved them for her father, she saved them for Anne, hoping that Anne would come back, but it was her father instead. So Anne's father, Otto, was the one who finally decided to publish Anne's writing and her works to let people know that this is what his daughter went through. He never knew the emotions of his daughter and things like that, and it was just really powerful that he could do that and let his daughter's story be known because he knew that she was such a good writer and she knew that she could really have an impact on people. So for the end of my presentation, I just wanted to recap and just make sure that you guys have hopefully learned about Anne's early life and how the Holocaust had an effect on her during it and what the Holocaust did and the what's the word that I'm looking for? that they, or the measures that the Jewish people went through dealing in the concentration camps, having to deal with the gas chambers and starvation and living in those horrible conditions. And then lastly, how Anne's diary left an mark not only on me, but it leaves a mark on other scholars and other Germans and people like that who were able to go visit the annex and things like that. And I hope that you really enjoyed my presentation and you guys have a great, lovely rest of your day. Thank you.